Tonight, we journey deep into the shadows, to a place where the boundary between the living and the dead is not just blurred, it's shattered. This is a tale that few have ever heard, a story buried beneath fear, secrets, and cold whispers in the dark. The truth behind this murder has been lost to time, hidden in the decaying walls of a mansion that no one dares enter. But tonight, I will tell you what happened in the Black Pines forest. This is not just a story, it's a warning. Welcome to the Scarying YouTube channel, the story of the Black Pines murder. Before going to the story, please subscribe to my channel. I get motivated to make every day a new scary and horror stories for all. The Black Pines mansion had always been a place shrouded in mystery, even long before the horrific events that would seal its reputation as cursed. Built in the late 1800s, it had once been the grand estate of a wealthy industrialist, Samuel Blackburn, who had disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Rumors whispered that the mansion itself had driven him mad. After his disappearance, the house had passed through many hands, each new owner abandoning it faster than the last. No one stayed for long. By the time Victor Morrow, a horror novelist known for his fascination with the dark and the grotesque, heard about the mansion, it had been sitting vacant for decades. Locals refused to go near it, and the thick forest that surrounded it, the Black Pines, seemed to have swallowed it whole. But to Victor, that was exactly what made it perfect. He had been in a creative slump, unable to finish his latest book, and he believed that the isolation and atmosphere of the mansion would provide the inspiration he needed. So he purchased it, ignoring the warnings from the locals, dismissing their superstitions as small-town nonsense. Victor arrived at the mansion on October 3rd, just as the cold autumn winds began to sweep through the forest. The trees, their trunks gnarled and black, towered over the narrow road leading to the house. The mansion itself stood at the end of a winding path, its once grand facade crumbling, the windows dark and hollow like the eyes of a corpse. Despite its state of decay, Victor felt an odd sense of excitement as he stepped through the massive oak doors. The smell of dust and mildew greeted him, along with the oppressive silence that seemed to hang in the air. He walked through the vast entryway, his footsteps echoing off the marble floor. The house was massive, with endless corridors and rooms that stretched out like the twisted limbs of a dying tree. The first few days passed without incident. Victor set up his writing space in the study, a large room with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the fog-covered forest. He spent hours at his desk, typing away, but every time he tried to write, the words came out wrong. His thoughts were jumbled, his creativity stifled by a heavy sense of unease that seemed to cling to him like a shadow. He told himself it was just the isolation getting to him, that he needed time to adjust. But then, on the third night, something changed. It started with small things, barely noticeable at first. He would hear faint creaking noises, as though someone was walking in the hallway outside his room. When he went to check, no one was there. Objects seemed to move on their own, just a few inches here or there, nothing too obvious. A chair slightly out of place. A book that he could have sworn he left on the desk, now on the floor. He told himself it was his imagination, that the old house was playing tricks on him. But the unease grew stronger with each passing night. On the fifth night, as a heavy storm raged outside, Victor was jolted awake by the sound of whispering. First, he thought it was the wind, but the longer he lay in bed, the clearer the whispers became. They were faint but unmistakable, a low, urgent voice that seemed to be coming from within the walls themselves. He couldn't make out the words, but the tone was enough to send a chill down his spine. Against his better judgment, Victor got out of bed and followed the sound. The whispering seemed to beckon him, pulling him toward the far end of the mansion, where he hadn't yet explored. He walked down the long, dimly lit corridor, the air growing colder with every step. At the end of the hallway was a door, one that he hadn't noticed before. It was old, the wood cracked and worn, and unlike the others, it was locked. Victor felt a sudden, overwhelming urge to open it. He searched the house for a key, but no matter how hard he looked, he couldn't find one. He tried forcing the door open, but it wouldn't budge. The whispers grew louder now, more insistent, as though whatever was behind the door was calling to him. That night, as Victor lay in bed, unable to sleep, the whispering returned. This time louder, clearer. Get out! Get out before it's too late. Victor shot up in bed, his heart pounding. It wasn't his imagination anymore. The voice was real and it was warning him. He grabbed a flashlight and crept out of his room, determined to find the source of the voice. As he made his way through the darkened corridors, the whispering seemed to surround him, echoing off the walls, filling the air with a sense of dread. He reached the locked door once again, and this time it was open. The room beyond was small and windowless, the walls lined with black and white photographs, all framed in tarnished silver. Victor stepped inside, his flashlight flickering as it illuminated the faces in the pictures. They were all of the same man, a man with sunken eyes and a thin, twisted smile. Victor's breath caught in his throat as he recognized the face. It was Samuel Blackburn, the mansion's original owner. In the center of the room was a single wooden chair, and sitting in the chair, as though he had been waiting for Victor all along, was Samuel Blackburn himself. His body was skeletal, his clothes tattered and covered in dust, his skin stretched tight over his bones. His eyes, wide open and lifeless, stared directly at Victor. His throat had been violently slashed, the dried blood staining the floor beneath him. Victor stumbled back, his mind reeling. This was impossible. Blackburn had disappeared over a century ago, and yet here he was dead, but somehow present, his body frozen in time. The whispering grew louder now, more urgent, but it wasn't coming from the walls anymore. It was coming from Blackburn. Victor stood frozen, staring at the body, when Blackburn's head slowly turned toward him. His mouth opened, releasing a low, raspy breath, and the words that followed were like ice on Victor's skin. You should have left. Victor screamed and bolted from the room, slamming the door behind him. He raced through the darkened halls, the whispers following him, growing louder and more chaotic. The front door, the windows, none of them would open. He was trapped. In a blind panic, Victor grabbed a knife from the kitchen, hoping to defend himself against whatever was coming for him. But as he turned, he saw the figure standing at the edge of the room, Blackburn, or what was left of him. His eyes glowed a sickly yellow, and his mouth twisted into a grotesque smile. Victor lunged at the figure, swinging the knife, but it was no use. The blade passed through the figure as though it were smoke. The whispers turned into a deafening roar, and Victor's vision blurred as the darkness closed in around him. The last thing he heard before everything went black was Blackburn's voice, cold and mocking. You should have left. Victor's body was found weeks later, after neighbors reported a foul smell coming from the mansion. The police discovered his lifeless body in the kitchen, his face twisted in terror, with a knife still clutched in his hand. There were no signs of an intruder, no evidence of foul play. The only clue was a single phrase, carved into the floor beneath him. You should have left. The mansion has remained abandoned ever since. Locals refuse to go near it, and those brave or foolish enough to venture inside never stay for long. But some say that on stormy nights, if you listen closely, you can still hear the whispers of Samuel Blackburn and the warnings of a man who should have listened. And so, the legend of the Black Pines Mansion lives on. A house that consumes those who dare enter, a place where the dead do not rest. Was Victor the victim of something supernatural? Or was it his own mind unraveling in the dark, twisted corridors of that cursed house? We may never know for sure, but remember, some places are meant to be forgotten, left to rot and decay. The next time you hear a whisper, you might want to listen before it's too late. If you enjoyed this terrifying tale, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more chilling stories. And until next time, beware of the darkness, because sometimes it watches you back.